This multimedia presentation will explore the key ideas of Gothic texts and the production of effects and emotions. I'll be looking at the main protagonists in both texts, the landscapes they are set in, and the construction of female sexuality in relation to Bram Stoker's text, Dracula, and Anna Lily Ampour's film, A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, with reference to Fred Botting's article, Negative Aesthetics. Botting states that the production of effects and emotions in Gothic texts are often extreme and negative. This is evident in Dracula and A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. Both texts employ fear, anxiety, terror, horror, disgust, and revulsion as staple emotional responses. Gothic texts were first produced in the middle of the 18th century, a period when Enlightenment was establishing itself as the dominant way of ordering the world. Gothic tales were set in the Middle or the Dark Ages, darkness being an absence of the light associated with sense, security, and knowledge. This helps characterize the looks, moods, and atmospheres and connotations of the genre. These characteristics are evident in both Dracula and A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. In Lily Ampour's A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, majority of the film is filmed in dimly lit streets which are abandoned and provoke an unsafe and eerie emotion. In Dracula, Harker notes that the hills soon pass into misty and cold gloom, and as evening arises, they are passing beneath ghost-like clouds. Botting states that landscapes stress isolation and wilderness, evoking vulnerability, exposure, and insecurity. Mountains are craggy, inaccessible, and intimidating. Forests shadowy, moors windswept, bleak, and cold. Nature appears hostile, untamed, and threatening. Again, darkness, obscurity, and barely contained malevolent energy reinforce atmospheres of disorientation and fear. The use of obscurity, the interplay of light and shadow, and the partially visible objects in semi-darkness through veils or behind screens denies the viewer visible and safe pictures of the world. Disorientation elicits anxiety or extends a stimulating and scary sense of mystery and the unknown. This is clearly evident through Ampour's film, as the entire film is filmed in black and white and the main character wears a chador while walking the streets. Botting states that in Gothic texts, women are subordinated to a regime of ideas, values, and practices in which their position is separated and authorized by nature as different from and less than males in terms of rational powers, moral character, and physical strength. This may be true in Stoker's text, as at the time of the text, women were not allowed to vote, get an education, or lead a profitable employment. A woman's destiny was to get married, at which time her husband took ownership of her body and any property she owned, and any children they had. Confined to the home, a woman was expected to take the role of the angel of the house, adopting a passive demeanor. If she had sex outside of marriage or fell into prostitution, as many unmarried or poor women did, she was branded a fallen woman. However, in the film A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, the female vampire is the moral authority of the story, rather than being the victim of a moral lesson. Indeed, the girl is victim to no one. She subverts the vulnerable role traditionally given to women in horror stories. Pleasure and fear accompany stories of women being chased along dark corridors, and at times seeming licensed to male fantasy, salivating over the images of defenseless and vulnerable femininity, thereby replicating the position of villains. Fictions also disclose a range of injustices inflicted on women. The new woman is indirectly and directly referenced in Stoker's novel, albeit in perverse and disordered ways. Mina, for instance, is a working woman who embodies feminist principles, but she must carefully be managed by the men around her to prevent her from turning into something monstrous. Lucy becomes a fallen woman despite the attempts of the menfolk to save her from temptation. In Dracula, three beautiful vampires visit the Englishman and come dangerously close to draining him of his blood before Dracula halts them, claiming that Parker belongs to him. This passage establishes the vital link between vampirism and the sex that pervades the novel. These undead women are unlike any of the living women in the novel, whereas Mina and Lucy are models of virtue and purity, and these sisters are voluptuous, aggressive, and insatiable. The position that the vampire assumes over Harker's body suggests a sexual act, and this display of female sexual aggression both attracts and repulses Harker. Girl Walks Home Alone at Night turns both traditional horror film tropes and everyday gender narratives on their head. Ampour's main character is a big-eyed, blunt-banged killer with an occasional air of innocence that seems at odds with the self-proclaimed bad things she does. Specifically, she sucks men's blood. More specifically, she sucks the bad men's blood.